name suggests, applied behavior analysis. So the term ABA has like three words in it: applied, behavior, and analysis. By applied, it means that it is done in the natural setting. It is done outside the structured and the research environment, in daily day-to-day environment. It can be school, it can be community, or it can be the home environment also, right? The second is behavior. In ABA, behavior is anything that a person can observe or can say or do. It is measurable and observable. Feelings are not behavior. So, by this, I mean that we always look at behavior in the terms of an action. For example, if we have to see that the child, if I have to take or if I have to measure when the child is crying, I can see that the child is crying, right? By seeing that he has tears, he might be whining or shouting. But if you tell me that I have to measure when the child is upset, I might not be able to do that, because some people smile when they're upset because they don't want to come across as rude. So using the terms which are not consistent across people and which are not actions is something which we do not think as, or we do not identify it as behavior. Some people might feel that behavior is always the challenging behavior or the undesired behavior. That is not the case. Anything that I'm doing, or you are doing, or you're saying is a behavior. You're breathing, that is a behavior. You're thinking, that is a process. Everyone thinks in the same manner. So that is a behavior. Smiling is a behavior. Being happy is not a behavior, because you can be smiling, but I don't know if you're happy or not. So it has to be very observable and measurable term. Analysis, as the word in itself is self-explanatory, study of the variables that change behavior, like and analyzing few changes in the environment and reading their effect on the behavior is called analysis. So that is ABA. So again, summarizing what is behavior in ABA, it has to be observable, objective, and operational. By operational, we mean that when two people are talking about behavior, both the people understand it in the same manner. If I say writing, we both understand that you're holding something in your hand and you are making some marks. It can be scribbling, it can be writing a letter, or it can be anything. But when I talk about writing, I'm sure we all are thinking the same thing. But on the other hand, if I talk about excitement, some of you might be thinking that, oh, a child is jumping, or you are jumping, or someone might be thinking, oh, the child is squeezing and making is has wide open eyes. So we all have different understanding of the word excitement. That is why we come to the behavior, and it all comes to how good we define a behavior: observable, objective, and operational, right? So what is ABA? ABA is a scientific teaching principle to understand and change behavior. The word here, scientific teaching principle, is very crucial, because some people think that it is just using some bribery or using day-to-day functions or techniques to change the behavior. But that is not the case. Applied behavior analysis is a scientific approach. We have evidence, we have a lot of research in the field of autism and other disorders or with animals that have proven that yes, ABA can help understand and change behavior. So there is a lot of evidence. We use a lot of data like any other science, physics, chemistry. All these sciences need data. So the same way, applied behavior analysis also use data. We take data on the behavior. And that is why defining the behavior in an objective and in a measurable term is important, so that we can take data, and after doing our intervention, we can make the observation whether the behavior is increasing or the behavior is decreasing. right? What so it improves socially important behavior. We always focus on the socially important behavior. So what is important for your client? What is it that they will need to be independent in their lives? What is the priority of the parent? So these are the three things we always keep in mind. We should not teach skills which are not important and which the child will not require later on in the life to be independent. ABA is especially important in the field of developmental disabilities. So as I said, there's a lot of research in the field of developmental disabilities, learning disability, autism spectrum disorder. So it has been proven to be very, very effective in the field of ASD and other developmental disabilities. So how does it work? How does the science work? So we believe that the behavior does not occur on its own. There is something that happens before the behavior, and there's something that happens after the behavior. And both these things can have a major impact on the behavior, whether the behavior is going to increase, whether the behavior is going to decrease, or will it ever happen again in future or not. So how do we do that? So we call it the ABC of ABA. A stands for antecedent, which happens before the behavior. Then comes the behavior, and then comes the consequence, as the term itself suggests in English language also. So we always start by identifying the behavior. It is very, very important to identify the behavior that you want to change. You should not go in without having any clarity, like, oh, I think I want to change this behavior. Oh no, maybe he is doing this. So make your observation, make your notes, and try to identify what is the behavior that you want to increase. For example, let's say the example is crying. So whenever the child cries, you make an observation that what happened before the behavior. Maybe the teacher asked the child to do some work, or the child is hungry, or it is a particular time of the day. So when we do our observations day after day or event after event, we always find a pattern in the behavior, like something happened, then the behavior happened, and then the mom came and she gave a candy, or the teacher came and she gave attention. So there are different consequences. When we put all these ABCs together, we can understand the behavior, we can teach new skills, and we can reduce the undesired behavior. So this is the basis of understanding behavior. Observation is a very, very important skill in the field of ABA. And there are three principles of ABA that we use. The first one is reinforcement. I have tried to explain it in a very plain English. I'm not going in the technical terms. And overall meaning of reinforcement is increase in the behavior after the delivery of a consequence. So, for example, the child, it happens always when a newborn cries, mom, he gets milk. So over and over, the increase in crying the increase in crying happens. He wants something, he will cry. He wants milk, he will cry. He wants a toy, he will cry. He wants attention, he will cry. Why? Because the behavior is getting reinforced. He is getting whatever he wants as soon as he cries. So this is what we mean by reinforcement, the increase in the behavior after the delivery of a consequence. Uh, Extinction and punishment are other two principles of ABA. I would not suggest anyone using these without supervision, because they can have their side effects, and one should be not side effect, but they come at a cost, and one should be prepared, and one should have enough experience in the field of ABA to be able to implement these two strategies. Uh, I can give an example of extinction, which is withholding a reinforcer to bring about desired change. So let's take example of this newborn baby who, whenever he cried, he always got whatever he wanted, maybe toy, mom came in, quickly picked him up, or got a toy. In the process of extinction, we will withhold a reinforcer. So every time he was crying, we were giving him whatever he wanted. And in the process of extinction, we are withholding it. So as humans, it is our nature to try harder and harder. So the child will cry more. He might throw things, he might scratch himself. So these are few things that the anyone will try to get it harder, to will try harder to get what they wanted. So extinction should not be done without a supervision. And same is the process of punishment, where we are trying to decrease a behavior, can also lead to some more undesired and severe undesired behaviors. So one should always have a supervision before implementing. So always go for the reinforcement. It is the best, because we are trying to increase the behavior, and there can be no side effect given we use it appropriately and not after the undesired behavior. Where can we use ABA? We can teach any new skill, if whether it's dancing, cooking, driving, um, public speaking, self-management. All these skills we can teach using ABA, using the principle of reinforcement. Especially kids on ASD or those who have developmental disabilities, they are not able to generalize their skills across environment or across people. So when done systematically, ABA can help them generalize those skills. As we have talked about reducing undesired behavior, yes, we can have a reduction in undesired behavior. It also helps in maintaining appropriate behavior. So what happens is, we teach a new skills, and sometimes the graph can go down. The child can forget that skill. So ABA helps in maintaining that skill also by using the principle of reinforcement. Again, we move, initially when we start a skill, we continuously reinforce. Every time the behavior happens, we reinforce. Later on, to maintain, we do not reinforce every time. We reinforce maybe after 1 hour, then we reinforce after 2 hours, so that we come more into the natural environment, because we don't always get reinforced for our behavior every single time. For example, if I started learning cooking, my dad used to praise me every time. Wow, what a nice food you have prepared. Once I got the hang of it, my dad would be like, yeah, it's okay. And after weeks, he started not, he did not compliment me. And one day, suddenly, he complimented me. So there he is maintaining my behavior of cooking, because he's not reinforcing me every day, which is quite unnatural, but he is giving me compliments, which works as a reinforcer for me in between, and that is maintaining my behavior of cooking frequently. And with kids, these are some skills that we can teach. Kids who do not like to sit for longer duration, we can increase the duration for which they are sitting, attending to people, task, eye contact, um, participating in activities, social skills, imitating others, communication skills, back and forth communication, how to sustain a communication, joint attention, which is one of the basics of social interaction, how to have joint attention, play skills, which is again a skill that is very, very important for kids who are on the autism spectrum disorder, and they mostly they don't know what to do in their leisure time. They might be engaging in stereotypy, they might be just throwing, crying. So we can teach play skills also, and we can have self-help skills, eating, folding laundry, bathing, brushing, washing hands, dressing up. All these skills we can teach anyone. Or if there's a more complex skill for us, such as driving, that can also be taught if you don't know that. Language, new language, and then some advanced skills that are sharing, and sharing emotions and sharing interest is a skill that comes harder to kids, especially who have developmental disabilities. So we can teach that skill to them. Cooperative play, parallel play, it all is related to sharing. So we can have that, taking turn, waiting, and any educational skills, whether it's maths, English, science. We can use different strategies, and we can teach any of the skills that we want our children to have. So I will go quickly over who can provide ABA. So the first one is BCBA. It is Board Certified Behavior Analyst. It is a course that you need to do from an affiliated university, and then you sit for the exam of BCBA. Mostly universities in US and Canada are doing it. There is one university in India. It's an institute, BMI in Bangalore, that provides this course. Then there is BCABA, that is Board Certified Assistant Behavior Analyst, and BCBA works under the supervision of a BCBA. Then we have RBT, which is which is the basic and is the first certificate that one can have in the field of ABA. You do not need too many qualifications for this one. You only need a graduation and some training of 40 hours, and then you can sit for the exam. Then BCBAD is a doctorate. You need to have a research in the field of behavior analysis to be a BCBAD. It is the highest certificate. Okay. So I have been talking about how to do that. You can teach that, you can teach this skill, you can make any changes. So how do we do that? So we'll talk about a few strategies. So the first one is reinforcement. It should always be the first choice whenever you want to make any changes in the behavior. Why? Because by definition, reinforcement increases the behavior. And if I want to increase my child's behavior, I need to have some reinforcers for him. And if we look at it in a way, like, for example, there are 24 days, 24 hours in a day, out of which the child is sleeping for 9 hours and doing other work. So, for example, and eating. So, he has only 10 hours, out of which 8 hours he engages in undesired behavior. If I focus on increasing the desired behavior by using reinforcement, the time for which he's engaging in undesired behavior, which was 8 hours, is automatically decreasing, and the number of times or the hours that he has to engage in appropriate behavior is increasing. So you are not actively working on decreasing the undesired behavior. You're working on actively increasing, but it has an effect that the undesired behavior is automatically decreasing. And sometimes what happens is, as parents and as teachers, siblings, we always tell, you don't do this, don't do that, stop crying, but we never tell them what to do. So this is another skill we need to have, to teach them, okay, you don't have to cry, but what can you do? You can ask for whatever you want, you can communicate, you can give me a picture, you can take me to what you want. So this is another thing that we always need to keep in mind, that what is the alternative behavior that the child can engage in if not crying, if not hitting. So always make sure that when you start decreasing a behavior or increasing a behavior, make sure that you have an appropriate behavior in mind that you can teach your child. The second skill tip that we can use is task analysis. So for most of our learners who because I come from the field of ASD, I'll be talking more about task analysis, but I'll try my best to give examples of skills or activities from the day also. So most of our kids have trouble in learning skills which include number of steps. For example, hand washing, putting on dress, bathing. So these are the skills. How do we teach them to be independent in these skills? So we can use task analysis, which means breaking down the complex skills into smaller steps. Why teach all of all the steps together when they cannot. Better teach one step at a time. We shape their behavior. Okay, first you teach how to take soap. Rest, I will help you how to do it. Then I will teach you how to rub your hands. Then I will help you do rest of the step. When we do it in a very systematic manner, the child will be able to learn how to wash hands independently. So how you breaking down a task is called task analysis, and when you're teaching one step at a time is called the process of shaping. And we all do that. For example, in the process of learning, your instructor doesn't take you to highway in the first day, right? They first teach you how to manage the car, how to manage the gears. Then they take you outside in the local area where you can learn to take turns. Then after that, when they are firm in all of that, then they take you to a highway where you have to change lanes, speeding cars are coming. So we all use the process of shaping, so why not use it for our learners also who have difficulty in learning these things that come easy to us. The other one is demand fading. It is a little tricky one because we all think that, oh, the child is running away. So what happens in demand fading is, it again comes back to the observation skills. I am giving my learner 10 math sums to do, and I see that every time after doing 5 sums he starts fidgeting and he starts looking outside and he starts engaging in some disruptive behavior in the class. So what can I do? Maybe I can give him 5, give a break, and then give 5. Over and over I observe that he is able to do only 5 responses. So it is okay to give a break in between. It is okay to give only 4 responses, give a 1 minute break, give again 4 responses, and then give a break. This is one example of demand fading. Other example can be, so this is, I am doing an antecedent management. I am doing it before the child starts fidgeting. Sometimes we can do the process of demand fading even when the child is in undesired behavior. For example, I'll give example of a very small nursery kid. I have asked the child to clean up the toys he was playing with. Sorry. Uh, and he starts running outside the class, and he sees that there are 15 to 20 toys that he has to clean. So rather than asking him to clean all the toys, that are 20 toys that he has to put in the box, I can ask him to put maybe 2. First I do first few to motivate him. Oh look, I'm also doing. So I give him 2 pieces and then I let him go. I, and I have to always learn from the experience that I had with my learner. So I know that looking at 20 toys, my child gets distracted. So maybe I can give him only 5 responses to do. So that is again the process of demand fading. I am fading, or I'm reducing the number of responses that the child had to do before he could get what he wanted. So this is demand fading. Uh, Last one is visual boards or visual schedules or any kind of a visual that we can use to help our kids understand better. So why is this? Because sometimes we always continue to use the language which they might not understand. When I ask you what do you want, it's easier for you to understand, but for kids who are on ASD or who do not have that much language, they might not know what you are asking and they might repeat what you are saying. They might say, what do you want? So in that case, it's always better to use visuals. When we go to a new country where the language is different, it's easier for you to to read the signs or to understand the signs rather than asking someone, right? So if I know that there is a left turn or there is a bus station or there is a coffee shop that is coming up or a petrol pump is coming up, it is easier for me to understand those visuals. So the same way, kids who do not have that much language, we can use visuals. We can have a visual board for their routine. In the morning you wake up, then you make your bed, you go to bathroom, you have your meals, dress up, take your bag, go to school. And the same way we can have schedule for any of the activities in the classroom. We can have a rule board for them. You have to keep a quiet voice, you have to sit on the chair, you have to keep hands to yourself. So rather than telling them those things again and again and again, it is better to use visuals for the learners. And of course we have to make sure that the child can understand what the picture is, right? So that is something we need to take care of. Okay, so these are few tips. As the field of ABA is very new, it started only in 1930s, and we are working with the humans and not with machines that can give us feedback to our science. So if I'm applying one strategy, the child can understand and can come back with a loophole. I can have a loophole in my strategy. So how people are doing ABA has created lots of myths. So it there are lots of myths that you will hear about ABA. For example, that ABA is for autism only. That is not the case. ABA can be done for any organism who engages in behavior. And behavior, as we remember from our first slide, is anything a person does or says, or an animal, anyone. ABA can be used with uh, your parents, it can be used with your kids, your in-laws, it can be used with animals. So yes, it can be. There's a lot of research in the field of autism because uh, the demand is high, but it can be done with animal with anyone. And as my supervisor says, the best way to try ABA is to try with your in-laws to change their behavior. Yeah. The second is ABA is strictly timetable and it teaches your kids to be robotic. Now there are different types of strategies that we can use in ABA. There is something called discrete trial training, which we do a lot of paperwork on tabletop. We use cards to teach the learner. We have, for example, I want to teach my child how to learn colors. So there are two different ways. One, I print out three cards. One is red, green, blue, and I continue to tell him this is red, this is green, this is blue. The other way is when I'm playing with the learner. So he likes to play with Play-Doh. So I can use different color Play-Dohs and I can teach him the colors there. He likes to play with balls. I can teach him colors there. So it depends on how you're teaching. So if I'm using the science in a non-natural way, it is not on the science, it is on me how I'm using it, right? So it depends on how the person who's implementing ABA is using it. But ABA in itself is not at all structured. Yes, we make few changes in the environment, but it does not make your child robotic. It depends on how your therapist is doing ABA. Science, that is not the science, it is the therapist who is conducting or implementing the science. ABA tries to change the client. As I've been saying again and again, we change the environment to make the changes in the behavior. We do not try to change the client. I cannot change someone's personality. I can only change what happens before the behavior or after the behavior to make the changes, right? ABA can't work with other fields. That is again the biggest myth I have heard after that ABA is for autism only. That is not the case. Behavior analysts always work with other professionals. I have worked with so many other therapists. I have worked with occupational therapists. I have worked with speech language therapists. I have worked with the physical trainers, because ABA focuses on the learner and not just on the science. We always see what does the child require, because ABA in itself can, yes, of course, change the behavior, but of course we also need, we can also get help from other professionals. I'm sure OT is great in his or her own field, so that is not the case. We all try to collaborate with other professionals also. uh, the other myth that we have heard is ABA is same across the time. So when it started in 1960s is almost the same as it is today. This is not the case. There is always research going on. There are new articles coming along. There are new um, strategies, new research that is coming on. It is up to the person who is doing ABA needs to make sure that they are well versed with the research. It is their ethical responsibility to be able to uh, have access to those research and make and use those strategies that are new in the field. Because as I said, we are not working with machines. One program that was made in 2000 is not going to work right now, because we are always evolving new strategies. We are able to learn, okay, this happened with me in the past, I don't have to do this in the past. So our kids or whosoever we are using ABA with also learn that this happened to me, I will not do this. And sometimes we find a loophole in our implementation, so we need new strategies. Yeah, okay. Again, one more. We have heard that it is not scientific. It teaches our kids to be robotic. It always occurs on table, one on one. It uses food and toys to bribe children. So this is one that you will hear the more here in, like, it's a common one. Like, we use bribe. So there's a difference between bribery and reinforcement. So whenever bribe comes, it always pops a policeman in my head. So what happens when you bribe a policeman is you give the bribery before they can do something, right? What happens in ABA reinforcement is first the behavior happens, then the reward comes. So it is the complete opposite. So it is not bribery. Bribery is always something, maybe money or something, you don't plan for it. Reinforcement, on the other hand, it has to be very systematic. It is pre-planned. How much are you going to give? After how many responses are you going to give? So there's a lot of planning and plotting goes in using reinforcement, but in bribery, you just go and give whatever you think is better. Yeah. So there's a saying that I really like: when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So that's what ABA is. We do not change the learner, or we do not change the child. We try to change the environment to help them be independent, to help them learn the skills that are important in their lives. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much.